The stars were burning when Lieutenant Park Dawn saw his ship die. The destroyer Indomitable had fought well. For 3 hours, it held the line at Kepler Station, while civilian transports escaped through the jump gate. But the Veth Dominion had sent too many ships. Their plasma cannons had torn through the hull like paper. Fire spread through the corridors. Men and women screamed as they were sucked into the cold emptiness of space. Duhan remembered the moment the bridge exploded. He remembered flying through the air. He remembered hitting something hard. Then there was only darkness. When he woke up, he was in chains. The Veth were insects. They stood on 4 legs and had 2 arms that ended in sharp claws. Their eyes were black and empty like the space between stars. They clicked and hissed when they talked. To them, humans were not people. Humans were animals. Humans were property. 17 crew members from the Indomitable had survived. The Veth threw them into a cargo hold that smelled of blood and fear. There was no food. There was no water. There was only waiting. An old Veth officer walked among them on the 3rd day. He studied each human with cold interest. When he reached Dohan, he stopped. "This one is an officer," the Veth said. His translator box turned the clicks into words. "Officers know things." Take him to questioning. The questioning lasted 2 weeks. They wanted to know about Earth's defenses. They wanted to know about fleet movements. They wanted to know about weapon systems. Dawn told them nothing. So they heard him. They used electricity. They used chemicals. They used tools that he did not have names for. On the 15th day, they broke his left arm in 3 places. Dahan screamed. He could not help it, but he did not talk. The old Veth officer watched the whole thing. When it was over, he leaned close to Dohan's face. His breath smelled like rotting meat. "You are strong for a soft thing," the officer said. "But strength does not matter here. You will work in the mines until you die. That is your purpose now. That is all you will ever be." They shipped him to Gora Prime. The planet was a rock floating in the darkness. It had no life. It had no beauty. It had only mines that went deep into the ground, where slaves dug for minerals that powered Veth warships. When Dohan arrived, there were 16 other humans in the camp. Within 6 months, he was the only one left. Some died from the work. Some died from the guards. Some simply gave up and stopped breathing. But Dawn did not die. He thought about his wife Gia. He thought about how she smiled when she was happy. He thought about how she cried when he left for his deployment. He thought about the promise he made to her. "I will come home," he had said. "I promise." He thought about his daughter Soman. She was only 3 years old. She had his eyes and her mother's laugh. The last time he saw her, she had wrapped her small arms around his neck and begged him not to go. "Daddy will come back," he had told her. "Daddy always comes back." In the darkness of the mines, Dohan held on to those memories like a drowning man holds onto a rope. They were the only things that kept him human. The guards called him Soft Thing. They beat him when he worked too slow. They beat him when he worked too fast. They beat him for no reason at all except that they enjoyed it. One guard was worse than the others. His name was Thorell. He was missing one of his eyes from an old fight, and he hated humans more than anything in the galaxy. Every day, he found new ways to make Dohan suffer. "Your kind is weak," Thorell would say while kicking him. "Your kind is pathetic. Why do you keep breathing? Just die already." Dohan never answered. He just looked at Thorell with eyes that held no fear. And something about that look made the guard uncomfortable. The other prisoners noticed something strange about the human. He did not cry. He did not beg. When they took away his food, he learned to eat less. When they took away his sleep, he learned to rest standing up. When they broke his bones, he set them himself and kept working. A prisoner from another species asked him once, "How do you survive this place?" Do-han's answer was simple. "I made a promise." Back on Earth, the war ended in a stalemate. Neither side won. Neither side lost. The Veth and the humans signed a treaty and went back to their own territories. Nobody came looking for the prisoners of war. The Veth said there were no survivors from the Battle of Kepler Station. Earth had no way to prove them wrong. Yunjia received a message that her husband was dead. She held her daughter Soman and cried for 3 days. Then she put away his photographs and tried to build a new life. She did not know that somewhere in the darkness of an alien world, her husband was still alive. She did not know that he thought about her every single night. She did not know that he was counting days, guards, patrol schedules, tunnel layouts, weak points in the fence, which guards were cruel for fun and which ones just followed orders, which prisoners could be trusted and which ones would betray anyone for extra food. Do-han memorized everything. He built a map in his mind. He learned the patterns of his captors. He studied them like a scientist studies insects under glass. The Veth thought he was broken. They thought he had accepted his fate. They thought he was just another animal waiting to die. They were wrong. Park Do-han was not waiting to die. He was waiting for something else. He did not know when it would come. He did not know how. But he knew with absolute certainty that one day his chance would arrive, and when that day came, he would be ready. The first year ended. Then the second. The human kept working. The human kept watching. The human kept counting. And deep in his chest, where no one could see, a fire burned that would one day consume them all. By the third year, Park Do-han stopped thinking of himself as a prisoner. A prisoner waits to be saved. A prisoner hopes for rescue. A prisoner dreams of the door opening and someone coming to take him home. Do-han had stopped hoping. He had stopped dreaming. He had become something else. Something harder. Something colder. He had become a student. The Veth did not hide their language from slaves. Why would they? Slaves were animals. Animals did not learn. Animals did not understand, but Do-han listened. Every day, he listened to the guards talking. He listened to their complaints. He listened to their jokes. He listened to the way they spoke to their superiors and the way they spoke to each other. Within 2 years, he understood almost everything they said. He learned that the Veth Dominion was not one united empire. It was a collection of castes that hated each other almost as much as they hated outsiders. The high caste ruled everything. The military caste fought the wars. The worker caste did the labor. And at the very bottom were the unclean, the ones who had committed crimes or questioned their masters. The unclean were treated almost as badly as the alien slaves. Do-han saw opportunity in this. In his 4th year, he met a Veth named Krill. Krill was small for his kind. He was missing 2 of his legs from an accident in the mines. The other Veth guards despised him because he had been born into the worker caste, but had questioned an overseer. For this crime, he had been cast down to the unclean and sent to die in the tunnels. One night, Krill was assigned to guard Do-han's section alone. The other guards had gone to eat. Krill sat in the corner, his remaining legs folded beneath him, his black eyes staring at nothing. Do-han spoke to him in the Veth language. "You are different from the others," Do-han said quietly. Krill's head snapped up. His mandibles clicked in shock. "You speak our tongue? How?" "I listen," Do-han said. "I watch. I learn." Krill was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a strange sound, like stones grinding together. "You are not like other humans," Krill said. "The others cry. The others beg. The others die. But you just watch. Why?" Do-han considered his answer carefully. "Because I made a promise to my daughter. I told her I would come home. That is foolish, Krill said. You will never leave this place. Maybe, Doan agreed. But my promise does not care about what is possible. It only cares about what I must do. Krill studied him with those empty black eyes. Something changed in the way he looked at the human. It was not respect, exactly. It was something closer to curiosity. Oh, wonder. You are strange, soft thing, Krill said finally. I think I like you. From that night on, Krill and Doan talked whenever they could. The Vethguard told him things. Important things. He spoke about the political tensions between the castes. He spoke about which officials were corrupt. He spoke about smuggling routes that moved goods in and out of the mining sector. In return, Doan told him about Earth, about blue skies and green forests, about oceans that stretched to the horizon, about children playing in parks and families eating dinner together. Krill had never imagined such things. His whole life had been darkness and stone and following orders. Your world sounds like a dream, Krill said one night. It is real, Doan said. And one day, I will see it again. By the 6th year, Doan had built a network. It was small. It was invisible. It had no name, but it existed. Other prisoners brought him information. A smuggler owed him a favor. 2 unclean guards looked the other way when they should have been watching. Small things. Quiet things. Things that no one would notice until they added up to something larger. Then came the day when everything changed. An overseer named Thrall had always been the worst of the guards. He was the one who had beaten Doan on his first day. He was the one who found joy in causing pain. For 6 years, Doan had watched him hurt prisoners. For 6 years, Doan had memorized his patterns, his weaknesses, his schedule. One morning, Thrall decided to make an example. A young Veth worker from the unclean caste had dropped a tool. It was a small mistake. It meant nothing. Thrall beat him to death anyway. When the young worker stopped moving, Thrall turned around. His single eye found Doan standing in the crowd of prisoners. You, Thrall said, pointing with a blood-covered claw. You are next. I am tired of looking at your face. Thrall walked toward him. The other guards watched with amusement. No one would stop this. No one ever stopped this. Doan did not run. He did not beg. He stood completely still as Thrall raised his claws. Then he moved. The mining pick had been hidden in his sleeve for 3 years. He had stolen it piece by piece, waiting for this moment. In one motion, he drove it into Thrall's throat. The guard's eye went wide with shock. He tried to speak. Only blood came out. Doan leaned close and whispered in perfect Veth. I have been waiting 6 years to do that. Thrall died in the dirt. Doan made it look like a tunnel collapse. He kicked down his support beam and buried the body under stone and rubble. When the other guards came to investigate, they found only a dead overseer killed by an accident. These things happened in the mines. They happened all the time. No one suspected the human. Why would they? He was just a soft thing. He was just an animal. That night, Doan lay in his cell and felt something strange. He searched inside himself for guilt. He searched for horror at what he had done. He found nothing. The man who had entered these mines 6 years ago would have been destroyed by taking a life this way. But that man was gone now. He had died somewhere in the darkness, and something else had grown in his place. Something patient. Something cold. Something that would do whatever was necessary to keep its promise. Krill came to see him later. The Vethguard looked at him with new eyes. The others are talking, Krill said quietly. They say Thrall was killed by a ghost. They say something hunts in the tunnels now. Doan said nothing. It was you, was it not? Krill asked. Doan looked at him steadily. Does it matter? Krill thought about this for a long time. Then he clicked his mandibles in what might have been a smile. No, he said. I suppose it does not. From that day forward, things were different. The whispers spread through the mines like fire through dry grass. Prisoners who had given up began to hope again. Guards who had been cruel began to look over their shoulders. Something was changing in the darkness of Gora Prime Dot, and at the center of it all, Park Dawn kept counting. 2 more years, he thought. Maybe 3. The pieces were almost in place. The moment was almost here. He was no longer just surviving. He was preparing. In the 8th year, the galaxy gave Park Dawn his chance. War had broken out again. Not between humans and Veth, but between the Veth Dominion and the Kreth Confederacy. 2 alien empires fighting over territory that neither truly needed. Dawn did not care about their politics. He cared about one thing only. The guards were leaving. Every week, more soldiers were pulled from the mines and sent to the border. Security grew thin. Patrols that once happened every hour now happened every 3 hours. The fences that had been checked daily were now checked weekly. The Veth were distracted. They were looking outward at their enemies. They had forgotten to look inward at their slaves. Dawn called a meeting. It happened in the deepest part of the mines, in a tunnel that the guards never visited because it had been marked as unstable. 12 prisoners came. 3 were human. The others were from species Dawn had never seen before his capture. All of them shared one thing. They still had fire in their eyes. "We leave in 3 days," Dawn said. A prisoner named Tok, a gray-skinned creature with 4 arms, shook his head. "Impossible. The surface is poison. We would die before reaching the landing pads." "I have breathing masks," Dawn said. Krill stole them from the emergency supplies. 15 masks. Enough for all of us. Another prisoner spoke up. She was human, captured from a colony ship 2 years ago. Her name was Han Yuri. "What about the guards at the landing pads?" "There are only 6 guards now," Dawn replied. "There used to be 30. I have watched them for months. They are lazy. They play games instead of watching the screens. They will not see us until it is too late." "And then what?" Tok demanded. "We take a ship?" "None of us can fly Veth ships." Dawn allowed himself a small smile. "We do not need to fly. A smuggler ship will be waiting for us at the edge of the valley. A captain named Vel. He owes me a debt." The prisoners looked at each other. Hope and fear battled in their eyes. "How did you arrange all this?" Yuri asked quietly. 8 years, Dawn said simply. "I have spent 8 years preparing for this moment. Every favor I earned. Every secret I learned. Every friend I made. It all comes together now." He looked at each of them in turn. His eyes were steady. His voice was calm. "I will not lie to you. This will be dangerous. Some of us may die. But if we stay here, we will all die eventually. At least this way, we die trying to be free." The prisoners voted. 12 hands rose. 3 days later, they moved. The escape began at midnight. The guard rotation changed at that hour. There was a gap of 15 minutes when the tunnels near the eastern fence were completely unwatched. Dawn led the way. He had walked this path 1,000 times in his mind. Every turn, every shadow, every place where a guard might hide. The first problem came at the fence. The lock was different from what Dawn expected. Someone had changed it. His heart pounded. 8 years of planning. Was it going to end here? Then Krill appeared from the shadows. The Veth guard clicked his mandibles nervously as he produced a new key. "They changed the locks yesterday," Krill whispered. "I stole a copy this morning." "Go, quickly." Dawn gripped his arm. "Come with us." "I cannot," Krill said. "They would know. They would hunt us both." "This way. I can cover your escape." He paused. "Besides, where would I go? Your human worlds would not welcome one who looks like your enemies." "Krill, go," the Veth said firmly. "Keep your promise. Go home to your daughter." There was no time to argue. Dawn nodded once, then led his group through the fence and out onto the surface. Gora Prime was hell. The air was poison. The ground was sharp rocks that cut through their thin shoes. The sky was orange and red, filled with clouds of acid rain. Without the breathing masks, they would have been dead in minutes. They ran. The landing pads were 3 miles away. 3 miles across open ground with no cover. If anyone looked out a window, they would be seen. 2 miles in, the alarm started. Sirens filled the air. Lights swept across the rocks. They had been discovered. Faster. Dohan shouted. They ran harder. Their lungs burned. Their legs screamed. Behind them, they could hear the sound of vehicles starting up. 1 mile left. A plasma bolt hit the ground near Dohan's feet. He looked back and saw a guard vehicle racing toward them. The gunner on top was taking aim again. "Spread out," he ordered. "Make yourselves harder to hit." The group scattered. Another bolt flew past. Another. The third bolt hit a prisoner named Sen. He went down without a sound. There was no time to stop. There was no time to mourn. Half a mile. The landing pads were ahead. Dohan could see the ships. He could see the guards scrambling, confused by the sudden alarm. A second vehicle appeared from the right. More plasma bolts filled the air. 2 more prisoners fell. Tok went down screaming, his leg destroyed by a direct hit. Yuri stopped to help him. "Leave me!" Tok shouted. "Go!" Yuri looked at Dohan. Her eyes asked a question she could not speak. "We cannot carry him," Dohan said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "If we stop, we all die." Yuri nodded once. She left Tok behind and kept running. The guard vehicles were getting closer. The landing pads were just ahead. Dohan could see the valley beyond them, where Vel's ship was supposed to be waiting. If the ship was not there, they were all dead. They reached the edge of the landing pads. The guards there had finally organized themselves. 6 Veth with plasma rifles formed a line. "Surrender!" one of them shouted. "Surrender or die." Dohan did not slow down. He had taken a weapon from Threll's body years ago. A small plasma pistol, hidden in his clothes, waiting for this moment. He fired. The first guard went down, then the second. The other prisoners grabbed fallen weapons and joined the fight. It was chaos. It was blood and fire and screaming. When it was over, 4 guards were dead. 2 had run away. 9 prisoners were still alive. They ran into the valley. Vel's ship was there. It was an ugly thing, covered in rust and patches. But it was the most beautiful sight Dohan had ever seen. The cargo door was open. Vel stood at the top of the ramp, waving frantically. "Move! Move!" the smuggler shouted. "They are sending fighters. We have 2 minutes." The survivors scrambled aboard. Dohan was the last one up the ramp. As the door closed behind him, he looked back at the mines of Gora Prime. 8 years. He had spent 8 years in that darkness. Now he was free. The ship lifted off. The ground fell away. Through the window, Dohan watched plasma bolts streak past as Veth fighters tried to catch them. Vel was a good pilot. He dodged and weaved through the fire. Then they hit the jump point, and the stars stretched into lines, and Gora Prime disappeared forever. Dohan sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. He had not noticed until now. Yuri sat beside him. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. "We made it," she said. Her voice was wonder and grief mixed together. 9 of us made it, Dohan corrected quietly. "Remember the others. Remember Tok. Remember Sen. Remember everyone we left behind." "I will," she promised. Dohan closed his eyes. For the first time in 8 years, he allowed himself to think about the future instead of just surviving the present. Earth, Gia, Shaman. He was coming home. But first, he had work to do. The intelligence in his head was worth more than gold. The secrets he had learned would change everything. And then there was the list. Every guard who had hurt him. Every overseer who had left. Every official who had decided that humans were nothing but animals to be worked to death. They thought he was dead. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Park Don opened his eyes and looked at the stars, streaming past. The escape was only the beginning. The transport ship landed on Mars Station on a gray morning in 2357 Park. Don stepped off the ramp and felt human air fill his lungs for the first time in 10 years. It was clean. It was sweet. It almost made him dizzy. A young officer was waiting for him. She looked nervous. "Lieutenant Park?" she asked, checking her datapad 3 times. "Lieutenant Park Dolan?" "Yes." "Sir, we thought you were dead. Everyone thought you were dead." "I know," Dolan said simply. "I am not." They took him to a medical facility. Doctors examined him for hours. They could not believe what they were seeing. His body was covered in scars. His bones had been broken and healed wrong in a dozen places. His left arm would never work properly again. But he was alive. Intelligence officers came next. They asked questions for 3 days straight. Dohan answered all of them. He told them about the mines. He told them about the guard rotations. He told them about the political conflicts within the Veth Dominion. He told them about smuggling routes and secret bases and corrupt officials. The officers wrote everything down. Their faces grew more and more shocked. "How do you know all this?" One of them finally asked. "I listened," Dohan said. "For 10 years, I listened. They thought I was just an animal. They talked freely around me. They never imagined that I understood every word." The intelligence he brought back was priceless. Within 6 months, Earth had destroyed 3 Veth spy networks. They had exposed a corruption scandal that brought down an entire sector government. They had rescued dozens of prisoners from mines that the Veth had sworn did not exist. Dohan was promoted to commander. They gave him medals. They called him a hero. He did not feel like a hero. He felt hollow. On his 3rd day on Earth, Dohan took a transport to Korea. He found the address that the records said was his wife's home. It was a nice house. Small garden, white fence. A child's bicycle on the front lawn. He stood across the street for 2 hours. He watched his wife Gia come home from work. She looked older, tired, but still beautiful. A man came out to meet her. He kissed her. They walked inside together. She had remarried. Of course she had. He had been dead for 10 years. What was she supposed to do? Wait forever for a ghost? Later that day, Dohan watched his daughter Soman come home from school. She was 13 now, tall for her age. She had his eyes. She walked right past him on the street without a second glance. Why would she look? Her father was dead. She did not remember his face. Dohan went back to his hotel room and sat in the darkness for a very long time. He had made a promise to come home. He had kept that promise, but home did not exist anymore. The next morning, he requested a meeting with Admiral Beek Yuna, the head of naval intelligence. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Dohan placed a folder on her desk. "I want to build something new." "What kind of something?" "A special operations unit, small, secret, designed to operate inside Veth territory." He paused. "I want to make them afraid." Admiral Beek read through the folder slowly. Her face remained calm, but her eyes grew sharper with each page. "You were talking about assassination," she said finally. "Sabotage, acts of war." "I am talking about prevention," Dohan replied. "The Veth think humans are weak. They think they can take our people and work them to death, and no one will stop them. As long as they believe that, they will keep pushing. They will keep testing our limits." He leaned forward. "But if they learn to fear us, they will stop. Not because they respect us, because they are afraid of what happens when they cross us. This could start another war. No, this will prevent one. Davan's voice was quiet but absolute. I have spent 10 years studying them, Admiral. I know how they think. They respect only strength. They understand only consequences. Admiral Beak studied him for a long moment. She saw the scars on his hands. She saw the stillness in his body. She saw the emptiness in his eyes where something human used to live. What happened to you in those mines, Commander? Dahan considered the question. I became what I needed to become. Nothing more, nothing less. The Admiral was silent. Then she signed the authorization form. You have 1 year, she said. Show me results. Dahan named his unit the Special Operations Division, but the people who joined it gave it another name. A Korean name .GWISAI, and it meant Vengeful Ghost. The first volunteers were people like Dahan, former prisoners, survivors, people who had lost everything to the Veth and had nothing left but rage. Han Yuri was one of the first. She had escaped Gora Prime with him. She had watched friends die. She wanted payback. Train me, she said. Teach me what you know. Dahan taught them everything. He taught them the Veth language. He taught them Veth customs. He taught them how to move unseen in Veth territory. He taught them how to kill quickly and quietly. He taught them patience. Our enemy is powerful, he told them during their first training session. We cannot defeat them through force, but we can defeat them through fear. One death at a time. One secret at a time. One nightmare at a time. How long will it take? A young officer asked. Dahan looked at him with eyes that had seen 10 years of darkness. However long is necessary. The first mission happened 6 months later. A Veth intelligence officer who had sold human prisoners to illegal mining operations was found dead in his quarters. No sign of forced entry. No witnesses. No evidence. Just a body and a mystery. The second mission followed a month later. A smuggling route that moved human slaves through Veth space suddenly went dark. Every ship vanished. Every contact disappeared. The Veth investigated for weeks and found nothing. Then came the third mission, and the fourth, and the fifth. The Veth Dominion began to notice. Something was happening in their territory. Something they could not explain. They called it coincidence at first. Then bad luck. Then enemy action. Finally, they gave it a name. GWISHI and the Ghost. They told stories about it in whispers. A human who had died in the mines but refused to stay dead. A spirit that walked through walls and killed without warning. A nightmare that hunted those who had hurt his people. Park. Dawan heard these stories and felt something strange. Satisfaction. The man who had entered the mines 10 years ago would not have recognized himself now. That man had been a good officer who followed rules and believed in justice. This man was something else, something harder, something darker. But he had kept his promise. He had come home. And now he was making sure that no other father would have to make the same choice he had made. In a small house in Korea, Yoonjia woke up from a nightmare. She had dreamed of her first husband. He had been standing in the darkness, watching her. She told herself it was just a dream. Park Dawn was dead. He had been dead for 10 years. She did not know that he had stood outside her window that night. She did not know that he watched over her still. Some promises have no ending. The galaxy learned to fear a word. GWISHIN in the Veth language. It had no translation. They had to borrow the human word because they had never needed one like it before. They had never faced anything like the ghost that hunted their territory for 3 years. The Gwishin unit struck without warning and vanished without trace. Slave ships disappeared in the darkness between stars. Their distress signals were never sent. Their cargo was never found. One day, they existed. The next day, they were gone. Overseers on remote mining worlds went to sleep and never woke up. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of poison. They simply died in their beds with expressions of terror frozen on their faces. Intelligence networks went silent. Agents stopped reporting. Secret bases were exposed. Codes were broken. Safe houses burned. The Veth High Council demanded answers. Their military commanders had none to give. "It is one unit," a general reported. "Perhaps 20 operatives. They are humans. Then destroy them. We cannot find them. They move like shadows. They strike and disappear. Our agents report that they might be anywhere. They might be everywhere." The High Council was not satisfied. They tripled security. They increased patrols. They offered rewards for information. Nothing worked. Park Doan watched the chaos from his command center on Mars Station. 3 years of careful work. 3 years of building fear. Now it was time for the final act. He gathered his team for one last briefing. Han Yuri was there. She had become his second in command. The young woman who had escaped Gora Prime with him was now one of the most dangerous operatives in human space. "Our target is Gora Prime," Dohun said. "The mine where I was held. Where we were held." He looked at Yuri. "There are 200 prisoners still there. Humans and others. We are going back," Yuri said. It was not a question. Yes, we are going to burn it down. The mission required 50 operatives. It was the largest Guishan operation ever attempted. They infiltrated Veth space in small groups, using smuggler routes that Dohan had mapped years ago. They assembled at a hidden base near Gora Prime, the same planet. The same orange sky. The same poisoned air. Dohan had never planned to see this place again. But some circles have to close. The attack came at midnight. The Veth had increased security since Dohan's escape, but security only works when you know what to defend against. Guishan operatives disabled the communication towers first, then the power stations, then the guard barracks. By the time the alarms finally sounded, it was already over. Dohan walked through the tunnels of the mine one last time. He stepped over the bodies of guards who had once thought themselves untouchable. He passed cells where prisoners huddled in confusion and fear. "You are free," he told them. "Ships are waiting. Go." One prisoner grabbed his arm. An old man with broken teeth and hollow eyes. "Who are you?" the man asked. Doan considered the question. "I was a prisoner here once. A long time ago. You came back for us?" "I came back for all of us." The extraction took 3 hours. 200 prisoners were loaded onto transport ships. Guishan operatives planted charges throughout the facility. When everyone was safely aboard, Dohan stood at the entrance of the mine and looked back one last time. He thought about the years he had spent in that darkness. The pain, the hunger, the endless waiting. He thought about Threll, the guard he had killed. He thought about Krill, the friend who had helped him escape. He pressed the detonator. The mine collapsed. Fire erupted from the tunnels. The central processing facility was destroyed completely. When the dust settled, Dohan used a cutting torch to leave a message burned into the stone. "We remember." 2 weeks later, the Veth High Council summoned the human ambassador for an emergency session. Ambassador Cho Myra was a veteran diplomat. She had negotiated treaties and ended wars. She had faced angry aliens before, but she had never seen the Veth look afraid. "You must stop these attacks," the council speaker demanded. "This is an act of war. You are breaking the treaty." Ambassador Cho smiled politely. "I am not sure what attacks you are referring to." "The Ghost. The Guishan. Your assassins who murder our citizens and destroy our property." "Ah," the ambassador nodded slowly. "You mean the consequences." "Consequences? For years, you have been taking human prisoners, working them to death in mines that officially do not exist. You told us there were no survivors from the Battle of Kepler Station. You lied. She leaned forward. The man you failed to kill in your minds has become something you cannot control. He has trained others. Dozens of them. They are already inside your territory. And here's the worst part. You cannot stop them. The council speaker's mandibles clicked in anger. You admit this? You admit attacking us? I admit nothing, Ambassador Cho said calmly. I am simply explaining reality. You thought humans were weak. You thought you could hurt us without consequences. You were wrong. She stood to leave. If you want peace, release every human prisoner in your space. All of them. Now, open your minds to inspection. Stop the slave trade completely. And if we refuse? Ambassador Cho paused at the door. Then I suppose the ghosts will keep hunting. The Veth Dominion capitulated within a week. 3,000 human prisoners were released. The illegal mining operations were shut down. A new treaty was signed with strict enforcement rules. The galaxy watched in shock. The mighty Veth Dominion had surrendered to fear. Park Do-han retired in 2365. He was 50 years old. His body was broken in ways that could never be fully healed. His mind carried scars that no doctor could treat. But he was done. He bought a small house on the Korean coast. It was far from the cities, far from the military bases, far from everything that reminded him of what he had become. Every morning, he woke up before dawn and walked down to the ocean. He sat on the rocks and watched the waves roll in. It was peaceful. It was quiet. It was not enough. His daughter Soman visited him for the first time on a sunny afternoon in autumn. She was 21 now. She had joined the Navy, just like her father. Just like the father she did not remember. Admiral Beak had given her access to the classified files. She had read everything. The mines. The escape. The Guishan. All of it. They sat on his porch in uncomfortable silence. Two strangers who shared the same blood. Why did you never contact us? Soman finally asked. After you came back. Why did you stay away? Do-han watched the waves for a long moment. Your mother had built a new life. You had a father who raised you. I did not want to destroy that. That was not your choice to make. No, he agreed. It was not. I made many choices that were not mine to make. I told myself they were necessary. Maybe they were. Maybe they were not. He paused. I am sorry. Soman was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the question that had been burning inside her. Was it worth it? Everything you did. Everything you became. Was it worth it? Do-han thought about the mines. He thought about the prisoners he had saved. He thought about the fear he had put into the hearts of those who had thought themselves untouchable. He thought about the parts of himself he had lost along the way. I kept my promise, he said finally. I told you I would come home. I came home. He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much darkness. Everything else was just making sure no other father has to make the same choice. Soman did not fully understand. She was not sure anyone ever could, but she stayed for dinner. And she came back the next week. And the week after that. Slowly, carefully, they built something new. Not the relationship they should have had. That was lost forever. But something different. Something real. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Veth still whispered about the Guishan. They checked their doors at night. They watched the shadows. They told their children stories about the human ghost who had crawled out of their minds and taught humanity to be monsters. Park Do-han did not care about their fear anymore. He had spent 10 years learning to survive. He had spent 3 more years teaching others to be feared. Now he was learning something harder. He was learning to live. On quiet nights, he sat on his porch and listened to the ocean. Sometimes Soman sat with him. Sometimes he was alone, But he was home, and that was enough.